and running. Okay. Well, while I work through this one, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Thorne here with you on HireMilitary. Proud to be with you all again, and really happy to have today an amazing guest who really is not just an amazing program manager with an amazing program, but truly a great friend. Happens to be in Southern California with me today, so I'm privileged to have Kathryn Warren of the Syracuse University Institute for Veterans and Military Families Onward to Opportunity program. She is the site manager for Southern California, San Diego, and Camp Pendleton. And Kathryn, really a pleasure to have you here with me today. Thank you so much. So, it's as I'm sitting here playing around with the screen and everyone thinks you're Chris right now and the gray screen thinks it's Kathryn. Let me just go ahead and start off by asking you if you can go ahead and just share with some of our viewers a little bit about you. You've got such a great background. I love it every time we sit down and have coffee and breakfast and hearing your story about your time and your service in the Marine Corps. And, we'd love to hear just a little bit more about you to get things started.
Poster up where the recruiter was looking for a few good men. And so, my friends, of course, did the triple dog dare to go talk to him. And so, ironically, my intro into the Marine Corps didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to. I was captivated that the Marine Corps had a drum and bugle corps. And so I was a drum and bugle corps junkie in high school. And so that's all I wanted to do. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. I did have a son-in-law in the future that I got to live vicariously through. But interestingly enough, along the way, I realized at a very young age what it meant to serve, what it meant to sacrifice, and what it meant to be part of something bigger. So definitely started in a different field. I don't even think I told you that one, Chris, as far as where I started out. So with that being said, I did spend a lot of time in the military, both on the enlisted and the officer side. I had the ultimate privilege of being a Marine Corps drill instructor. Fun fact, my class was the first that wore that campaign cover as women. So again, for those of you that are familiar with that year, you kind of know how far back we're going now. But then also got to spend time on the officer side as well. I was a financial manager by trade. So when it comes to all those little basic things that you deal with when you're in the military, whether it was a travel claim or your military pay or, maybe even your budget, I was your gal for a very long time. I really love the Marine Corps. It really became more about self. And how I can contribute to a bigger purpose and a bigger, make an impact on a wider variety of different folks out there. And so, really the long story short, when I hit that 20 years, it was, I was still having fun. And so, leading me up to when it was time to get out, you really start thinking about all the things that, folks talk to you about. But for me, it was definitely something that it took a little while before it started to sink in. I can't hear you, Chris.
Mate. Oh, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? There we go. Sorry about that. So yeah, so for a lot of people out there, you and I were just talking about the fact that you were actually selected for an incredibly rare rank, Chief Warrant Officer CWO5, which is, I'm a Navy Master Chief, and we talk about being the 1% of the 1% out that, but I think CWO5 is like the 0.5% of the 1% of the 1% above. So, you absolutely had just an amazing career out there. So, I appreciate all your time. I appreciate your service. I appreciate your family's service. But okay, let's go ahead and talk now about what we all really love to talk about, which is what comes after service. And so you lived through the transition process yourself. And I think, like all of us going into it, you had some expectations. I'm sure you felt you had a good grasp on how it was going to go, what it looked like, and what that process was going to mean to you. So I'm kind of curious to hear what your plan for your transition was, what your expectations were, and then did your transition meet your expectations, or did you find new stories that you never thought you were going to have?
I definitely thought I had all the answers. And for those of you that have been out there, now you realize that that is so not the case. My husband not at the time, but my husband now was actually in the process of getting out prior to me getting out. In fact, I took his spot when it came time for him to actually leave the military, and I slid into to his position. I was really intrigued by what he was going through, and that was higher education. And in our small collective group of folks, my husband really kind of took a walk on the wild side. And what I mean by that is really dipped his toes into academia. So my last couple of years on active duty, I was watching him go through the EMBA program at Pepperdine. And I was just totally blown away by the stories, that he was bringing home. So he likes to joke around and say that I followed him there. I really did look at other programs, but my heart and my mind was set on going to school. And so with that being said, I did take advantage of some of the transition programs per se that they had out there. Again, you're talking 2013, so it's been a hot minute since since that time. But I did attend what they call ETAS now. I did go through Business 101, when it was there. And the last thing, ironically, that I went through was TRS. And I remember sitting in TRS thinking, why didn't I do this first? And that really, hindsight being 2020, goes back to, because I had no clue. And ironically, fast forward just a little bit, I kept that TRS book. I kept that DOL book that they give you. And when I actually did some time as a DOL facilitator, I went back and looked at that, and I just kind of laughed out loud, because I was like, wow, were you important? Just some of the examples that I was giving, it was somebody who really had all the answers. And what I mean by that is I made my decision to go to school. I was very pulled by higher education, pulled by academia. I wanted my experience with higher education as well. But what I forgot along the way was the whole transition piece, Chris. Again, I watched my husband, he went through it. He was successful with it, but for me, I didn't think about what it was going to feel like to take that uniform off for the last time. September 17th is my bunniversary. And so for you ladies out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That was the last day I slicked my hair back and put it in that little sock bun for the, for the very last time. I didn't think about that. I thought I was going to go to school and all these wonderful things were just going to miraculously happen to me.
Had going into it. Is that fair to say? Okay. So if there was, the education track, I mean, obviously education matters, and I have an incredible respect for that. But I think you mentioned something that all of us who have gone through the process and come years later look back on it would probably say we felt the same way, was that sitting in that TAP class, that TRS, whichever version it may be, we felt like we had it figured out, right? I mean, I've done 20, 30 years in the military. I'm a senior leader. I've gone around the globe and done worse things than I can ever dream of. So this getting another job is just getting another job. And so we all sort of go through. So if you were to say that there was one thing that you were just sure of in your head as you were sitting through those TRS and TAP classes and everything, if there was one thing you were positive in your mind, that turned out to be a complete fallacy, what do you think that would be?
Resume prep, and really it's a new skill again. But again, you think, hey, I'm at the top of my game. I get this, I don't know if you've ever gone back and looked at some of your first resumes. Again, I just laugh when I went back and looked at some of my first resumes. But it was definitely the networking piece, and it was definitely science, I guess you could say, of transition that I really didn't put a whole lot of thought into, because I was going to school and I was going to have it made. Now, let me tell you, personally, I did go to Pepperdine. I graduated in August of 2015. It's kind of hard to believe that it's almost 5 years since that happened. The single best thing that personally Kathryn could have ever done for myself. I learned so much. And it was ironically my kids that pointed it out to me. Academically challenged like no other, don't get me wrong. Especially when you're sitting in a room full of other just absolutely, professionals, everybody who's just an expert in their craft. I was challenged socially. And that's the other piece, Chris, that I didn't even think about. I thought I was going to hang up, my uniform. I was going to get all those fun clothes that I never bothered to get at all those fun places, to wear. I was going to get to experience, some of Kate Spade's fun little dresses, from time to time. And it was the social piece. That transition between military and the rest of the world. And I thought I was the nice one. But I found out quickly how my directness really impacted people and chased people away. How my occasional knife hand, from time to time, really didn't sit well with others. And I had to laugh because, I had to make up and make friends with some of my colleagues, in my cohort at school, because I didn't realize I was just coming off of this whole active duty thing. And ironically, there was another Marine in my class. We would always just look across the room at each other whenever we were completely lost. And just looking at each other, we're like, okay, is he more lost than I am? Am I more lost than he is? And it really gave us that comfort. Never knew each other, on active duty, but it gave us that comfort just to have the other one in the room. And so when it was all said and done, our organizational professor, behavior professor, had us get together on the very last day and do these different exercises. And that's really what I realized what transition really was. It really was a thing. Didn't quite get it all the way yet, but I got it that transition was a thing. Because I really felt sometimes like I was that square peg trying to fit into the round hole, Chris. So I had to throw that in there about school, because wouldn't change it for a million.
So you hit some of the key things though, and so often coming off of active duty military, that ability to communicate effectively. I mean, there's a lot of us who figure that we're great communicators, and we don't realize how much military is in our communication and the way that we are. And so that actually kind of cracks me up that you mentioned that. But okay, so I love that you did that. Obviously, the education and how it matters spread through in your life. And I know that there's conversation to have on that growth mindset as you go through the transition. But, a couple things that we all, I think, very much recognize in transition that matters that maybe we didn't necessarily get before. And the first one about that is something you mentioned, which is networks. Your networks matter, whether that's through your educational platform, through professional experiences and growth and associations and people, but networks matter. And I don't think we all necessarily realize that before we start the transition process. Did you have strong networks, and how did you lean into those?
And what I didn't realize was, the day, the pack came off for the last time, that was still, quote, quote, my network, but wasn't necessarily going to be what I needed to continue on and move on with my future. I really missed a lot of opportunities right after I got out of the service when it came to different types of networking events. But the one that I really want to, kind of just hone in on and talk about the importance of is LinkedIn. I mean, I was that crazy person who kind of treated LinkedIn like Facebook, where if I didn't know you, you weren't coming in my network. If I didn't know you and I didn't like you, you weren't coming into, my network. And I really go back on some of these different opportunities, that really passed me by, because I was able to talk and connect with folks, but I didn't have any network or platform to keep them, to keep them close. And Chris, I call it one of my big losses. And again, at the time, didn't think anything about it. Of course, hindsight's always 2020. When we did do our international business trip with my university, I found myself in Hyderabad, India. And who gets to say that they get to walk the floor of Lockheed Martin in Hyderabad, India, and I'm connecting, with that project manager that's there because he's a former Navy guy, okay? And not even realizing, the connection that was there, the conversation that was there, and the missed opportunity because Kathryn never followed up. Does that make sense? And so really taking a deep breath and realizing that you're going to have to come outside of what's comfortable to you. Chris, you called about the growth and the fixed mindset. Those are like fun words in my house right now, because as people, we don't realize sometimes how incredibly fixed we are, with our behaviors, and how challenging it can be to sometimes grow outside of that. And, plug for Kevin Cortez, because he was one of my first, I'm going to meet some strange person for coffee, but plug for Kevin Cortez, and just gave me, just so much confidence, to kind of go out there and continue doing this. Another gentleman by the name of Zeb Severson was one where, I'm like, okay, I'm going to Symphony Hall in San Diego, nice place, but I'm like dropping pins because so my trail could be found, because I was going to meet some strange person. But just realizing the blessing that comes with LinkedIn and all the people that you get to meet because of it. So don't waste your network and find folks that aren't like you. You have to find people that are different than you, whether they're in different industries, whether they've had different career progressions, whether they're just starting out, generational. From the boomers all the way down to the Zers right now. If I had my perfect team, I'd have like one of everybody, in the team there. But definitely take advantage of the networking piece.
It's interesting that you mentioned something that I think is really important, which is your network needs to be, it needs to include people who don't look like you, who don't have the same shared experience, because if all of you are just sharing the same experiences together, nobody's growing from that. Nobody's being exposed to something new or learning something or getting outside of that, that comfort zone. So I love that you mentioned that. And, so often in transition, when we start building networks, it's very tempting to limit ourselves to veterans as the only networks that we're going to reach out to, which veterans are great. Don't get me wrong. Love it. Absolutely spectacular network. And I love the veterans network, especially on LinkedIn, that we have to lean on. But, veterans are 19 million in the United States, about 11 million adult age or working age veterans out there. And there's 320 million other people in the workplace out there that you want to be able to network with. So networks matter, but one of the things that comes along with networking then is really having those mentors. And I think we all had them in the military, but did you have a mentor who really helped grow you through your development and transition process?
Collective group of girlfriends, that were always there to ever so eloquently just put me back in my place, when I got out of line. And the folks along the way, to help guide you, whether it's, professional decisions that needed to be made or personal. I kind of fell off the wagon with that, though, when I got out of the military. Oh, Chris, I just have to do a segue real quick. For those of you that have children, it is the hour of my younger daughter's birth right now. And so I have to send her a text message saying happy birthday. So thank you for allowing me to do that. Happy birthday, Sam. I don't know if you're listening. I think you're working, but we love you.
Birthday, Sam, from us as well. And, I'm actually going to use that as a moment, because in the conversation, as we were talking about networks, Kenneth P. on the chat session had mentioned, that those networks, different people need to be relevant. And, he asked, what's the point of having a network in banking if you're going to work in engineering, which I get where he's coming from. But at the same time, if I'm going into engineering, that network in banking might end up being the finance arm that I end up using later on for a project that I'm going for, or somebody who can open my mind to help me understand the world of finance and how it impacts the work that I do and wouldn't have thought of if I never had it. So I definitely, Kenneth, and I'd be curious to hear what you think, Kathryn, but I think that's important that you don't limit yourself to people in that specific zone of opportunity that you're thinking about, because there's so much more that you can absorb from the world around you. I'm curious what you think about that one.
Whenever you went to one of the service academies, maybe it was, the staff academy, maybe it was TBS, maybe it was OCS, and you had everybody that was in that group with you. And then years later, you needed somebody, you knew the supply person to call, or, you were having a pay problem, you knew the financial manager to call. And interestingly enough, by not limiting yourself, you just open your prospects and your perspective to a whole bunch of different things that are out there. So for example, you mentioned engineering, that's the swim lane right now. This is where I want to go, passion, purpose, all those other things that are going on, but you meet somebody from outside, of that line of work. And again, it's one of those things sometimes where, it's when you get out of the service, whether it's a whole career or it's a handful of years, it's really about meaningful employment and purpose. And whether you're a veteran, you're a military spouse, or you're just getting out, statistics show that, we want that purpose, in our job. And for those of us that spent a long time in the military, sometimes it's really dreaming big and finding what your ambitions, are going to be. And so it could be that conversation with somebody that just sparks an interest, that you've never even thought of before, that ultimately, maybe not in the moment, you continue to cultivate that relationship, you develop this bigger and better thing. And before long, you find yourself in a completely different playing field.
Up with a lot of the conversation, and she's really providing some great thoughts. So I appreciate that, Joanna. And she also sent a happy birthday out to Sam as well. So that was there. So, all that is great, but, and I love this, we have talked for hours and hours on enough, and I love it, but, let's transition to that next part here, which is now you found your way into this amazing organization that truly, to me, might be one of the key differentiators in successful transitions DoD-wide. To me, and that's my personal opinion, I think there's many others who would agree, but Syracuse University, the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, Onward to Opportunity is just one of the most incredible programs available that every transitioning service member, veteran, and military family member should know about. So I'd love to hear how you found your way to Onward to Opportunity, and really, instead of me running my gums, tell us a little bit about Onward to Opportunity, what it is, what it's all about.
Many veterans, I had to figure it out after I got out of the service, after I graduated from college. I had to figure it out. I thought I had all the answers, but I didn't. And I learned so much during that time. I learned from my cohort. I learned at my, the different jobs that I did have from different folks, that had no military, affiliation. And, to this day, I'm so eternally grateful, for everything that they taught me. But I had to really sit down and do my own little Venn diagram. I did use, what color is my parachute, and started putting together, some of that petal exercise or the flower exercise that's in there, talking about, what's important to me. And ultimately, veterans and education, kept coming up on the list. And so once you kind of know it, because you feel it in your gut, it's intuitive. Okay, if this is something that really excites me and, I want to do this, how do I make this happen? And I did spend some time as a DOL instructor here in Southern California. I tap danced around Camp Pendleton all the way down to Point Loma, and really got to see a variety and a spread of different folks that were out there. But ultimately, I had never heard of the SkillBridge programs until I started that job. And so there was one slide at the time where you could spend it on the DoD SkillBridge. And I would play around like, how do I spin this slide? I just don't want to throw it up and move on to the next. And so because I was on all the different installations, I was collecting flyers. And so, it's so funny, hindsight being 2020, looking at the flyers, and here I am promoting these programs, sending them to the folks at MCCS, saying, make the phone call. The answer is no, unless you ask, throwing it out there, but really just sitting back one day and thinking, man, I want that job. And so when I saw that there was going to be an opportunity, I really jumped on it. And for me personally, for my family, it's been really fun to see this evolution, over these last, it's almost, we're coming up on 3 years, which is hard, for me to believe. But just being able to jump on a program like this that not only personally, meets the things that I need in order to, be purposeful and provide meaningful outcomes, to other folks that's out there, but the organization itself. Years ago when I was a kid, and living back east, I'm originally from outside of Cleveland, Ohio. We always heard about the Syracuse. It was the Orangemen back there, and now the Syracuse Orange. And so when the reality of all of this really started to happen, I was just completely floored. But the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, Onward to Opportunity, is one of several different programs that we offer. We do have ties to the university. However, we are a 501c3. And the different types of programs that we offer through the IVMF are entrepreneurship type programs. I'm telling you, regardless of where you are in that process, if you're there, we probably have a program for you. We have Onward to Opportunity, which is really your career enhancement. Our niche is career enhancement and the certification piece. But we're so much more than just certifications. And then we also have our America Serves program as well. For example, if you find yourself in New York City and, need some help navigating the landscape, America Serves is going to be there to offer community support as well. But Chris, making my way there, just floored. And then being able to work with the folks locally here on my team. We've been through a couple already now, but being able to work with the folks here locally, as well as the rest of our team, It's been just a really fun and interesting ride. For those of you that never thought about remote work, it's interesting the relationships you build with people that you maybe get to see once, maybe twice a year. It's absolutely incredible. And so I hope that answers your how did I get there piece. It definitely from the beginning was where I needed to be. So.
Story. And it's interesting you mentioned working as a facilitator and some DoD skill bridge. I sometimes joke when I talk to people, day 4 slide 35 bullet number 2 DoD skill bridge, and there's obviously so much more depth to it on the opportunities. And I love that the Onward opportunity and the IVMF opportunities really come through there. So that's probably a great segue into specifically with Onward to Opportunity. It's kind of unique in that it's hybrid. It falls under Skill Bridge for opportunity, but it also has the endowment that really supports making sure that veterans as well as military family members participate in it as well. So, it's a great time maybe to hear a little bit more about what is Onward to Opportunity.
Just going to get those certifications. You're going to get a little bit of us. As Joanna and I like to say along the way. We have 19 different installations across the United States. We also have an online program. So if you're a veteran, and I'll just use Cleveland as an example, and you're in Cleveland, you still can use our program. You won't necessarily use it through one of us at an installation, but you can still gain access to earn these relevant in-demand certifications. The thing that I love about our program is we empower you folks. You have to do the work. And for service members, sometimes that can be a sticky little situation. I'm guilty. And for example, maybe you're fiddling around and you can't get something to print and you're like, hey, Lance Corporal, can you come do this for me? There's no more of that. When you get out of the service, you have to do it yourself. There's not going to be anybody to sit down and plan your career trajectory with you or remind you, hey, Kathryn, it's time for you to take your CFT, or hey, I scheduled you for the pistol range on this day. Nobody's going to do that. You have to do it yourself. And so having this opportunity before you transition from the service is absolutely fantastic. And again, it's the empowerment, because we're all going to be here to support you and guide you, but you're ultimately the ones making the decisions, and you're the ones that are doing the work. And for those that have gone through the program, you understand sometimes that can be really sticky because you think you have it all laid out, and then something comes and knocks you upside the head. That's completely unexpected when it comes to the transition piece. But we do provide at the installation levels face-to-face online instruction as well. And so the way we do it, we all do the same exact thing. We all have the same exact criteria. But the beauty of this is we all get to use this and apply this at each local installation, because installations need local areas, different areas need different things than different areas. I can't say that. And so in saying that, you get to COVID and all the mandates from the federal level down to the installation level. We have been virtual for these last couple of months. We will be virtual here in Southern California here in July in a couple of weeks, and then again in August as well. But just because we're not shaking hands and hugging each other, we still are giving you something that you're going to be able to take with you prior to you digging in and getting this certification coursework done. I can't hear you, Chris.
How's that? Technology. Bless me in technology. No, I was just mentioning that what you probably just answered my next question, really, which was what would a person expect if they enrolled in Onward to Opportunity, and how is that structured? What does it look like? 3 days of classroom, 6 months of study? How is that structured, sort of, as a program?
The 3 days that we quote quote spend in the classroom together. You have 180 days to get through that certification coursework. But before you get there, you're going to spend 3 or 4 days, or depending on that geographical area, what is relevant to that geographical area. We're going to talk a little bit about resumes. We'll talk a little bit about interviewing, but what we really focus on is that holistic piece of you, and really getting you to take a step back and open up your eyes to ideas or thoughts that, maybe you hadn't thought of before. So for example, having a personal brand, we all know what brands are, but okay, I need a personal brand, and what the heck is that going to look like? It's not something like you're going to start it and then an hour later you're going to have like this beautiful finished product. We're going to give you the tools and bring in folks, whether they're employers or local resources, to complement the curriculum that we go out there and facilitate. So we'll talk about branding. We'll talk about emotional intelligence. And for some folks, they're like, "Oh, I'm good with my EQ. I'm good to go." But then when you start diving a little bit deeper and finding out what a big deal it is on the outside, those are the things that you're able to look inward and find out what's important to you and how you're going to project post-service. Because ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, remember, I thought I was the nice one, I'm smiling and fun to be around, and I stumbled, and skinned my knees so many times. Because of my lack of self-awareness when it comes to emotional intelligence. But instead of just going down the typical roads, and concentrating on, okay, well, what are your 3 weaknesses? Concentrating on your strengths. What are you good at? What can you do to absolutely just dazzle a room, and draw people in? Is it your love of nature? Is it your love of learning? Are you an arranger? Where are your strengths? So then you could take those strengths and start thinking about, okay, well, I want this job in this industry at this company. How can I take that and spin it to, be that missing puzzle piece, that organization needs to move forward? Because folks, the thing that I want to throw out there, we all have some absolutely incredible pasts with incredible experiences. But really, when it's all said and done, people want to know what you're going to do for them, the with them, if you want to say it that way. What's in it for me? How are you going to make me money? How are you going to increase, my bottom line? And so being able to take all of those experiences, thinking about your strengths and what you're good at, and literally being that puzzle piece that you can stick in there. So classroom days, coursework, you have 90 days to get that coursework done. Now, if you are a go-getter, and trust me, Camp Pendleton 19 and San Diego 13, those folks are on fire right now. Maybe it's because everybody's at home right now, but I absolutely love whether it's an email or going out on LinkedIn. I just saw Rachel and Rasa's certificates of completion where they've gotten through the first step. They completed that coursework. So you get 90 days to do that coursework. The next 90 days are spent really studying for that certification exam. We need 3 practice exams at an 80% or better in order for us to pay for that certification. The best part about it is you could take those practice exams as many times as you want, but we do need 3 with that 80% or better. And then also at that time, you're going to start collecting some of that information that you're going to need to make application to the appropriate governing body that's out there. So a total of 180 days. You don't have to take the certification within that 6-month time period unless if you're on a roll, just keep on that roll and get her done. And I would say that the majority of our folks do try to take it within that 6 months, but again, everybody's different, and ultimately it ends up what's being best for you.
Brought up a question there, or something that I always think about, and I've heard others, is 6 months. If I'm that go-getter, I'm really racing through. Can I do more than one credential, more than one certification? Can I participate? Is it 6 months to do as much as I can do, or is it one credential?
And it's always interesting to see who takes advantage of it. As soon as you finish your assigned coursework, you can load or have loaded any other coursework or any other learning pathways that we have in our curriculum. We do use the Percipio platform. And so in addition to certification coursework, it's almost like its own LinkedIn Learning per se, where if you want to know something about the nonprofit industry, you can go into Percipio and Google that, and that'll be there. So remember, we pay for one certification, but you get that coursework for maybe another certification that you're interested in. And so in saying that, it's always interesting to see, how folks take advantage of that. And some folks just choose to go through the coursework and pay for that that additional certification out of pocket. Some folks have their employer pay for that certification piece, because a lot of employers won't necessarily pay for the coursework, but they'll pay for the actual certification. And if you've done any research on certifications, you're going to see that the majority of and bulk of that expense comes with the coursework. So it's definitely something to take advantage of, Chris.
Conversation many times, and I think that's such an amazing opportunity right there for those who really take advantage, especially COVID time. If you're at home and you've got time to really press through, you can really do some amazing things, and that opportunity at multiple credentials, or at least the background to get you toward multiple credentials, really matters. So maybe that's a good lead into my next question, which is, well, what kind of credentials are we talking about? I know I've seen, there's all kinds of different environments out there to get different credentials, and whether it's HR, whether it's project management, there's all these domains out there. Which certifications and credential types can I get from Onward to Opportunity for absolutely no cost to me?
Types of certifications, whether you're on the networking side or the security side. Anything from Fortinet, we just put the NSC4, in our curriculum. We have the CompTIA, whether it's the A+, Net+, or Sec+. We have a partnership and grant with the Google folks for the Google IT certificate. We're actually offering, if you're into data analytics and you really want to take that deep dive, we have SAS programming out there for you. We can go ask Gary how his SAS training is going right now. That's really lots of fun. But if you look at what's out there in the job market, you have to think about, where are you going to fit in? And this is where that soul searching comes into play. It's not just about getting a job, but how am I going to be able to get a job and traject myself in the way that I want to? And right now, I mean, IT, you have to have some sort of technology background. I mean, even if it's just the basics. So Chris, we laugh when we say we're working with technology here. There's no IT section to set up this live stream right now. It's all you. So something from that level, up to bigger levels. But we also offer business management type courses as well. Anything from the PMP, the project management professional, down to the APHR through HRCI if you're into human resources. And the one caveat that Joanna and I always tell folks out here is making sure that you understand the requirements that are there for these certifications. we joke and say, yep, we're going to pay for that coursework, we're going to pay for the certification, but the rules still belong to those governing bodies. So we really encourage folks to go to PMI.org or HRCI.org, and do the research on these certifications to find out exactly where they're going to fit into the mix. We're also always looking at different new opportunities. One of the interesting pilot certifications that we're going to have coming up involving some supply chain management. So there's always things that we're always looking for, different things that are out there, Chris.
So, you hit on a point there that in the chat stream, Kenneth P. had asked, and I know Joanna had actually answered it, but I want to make sure anybody who might not have seen the chat stream, can I do the program online if I don't in one of the program areas? And as Joanna pointed out, yes, you absolutely can, Kenneth, and go look in the chat stream right now. She has provided a link for you to apply to be able to do one of those. So I really love that. So, and I know, my goodness, we could keep doing this all day long, and I would love to keep doing this all day long, but maybe this would be a great point to really start going into who's eligible, who is eligible, and when should they apply? I mean, is this just anybody in the world? Is this, when I'm done with boot camp, who is eligible for Onward opportunity, and when should they apply and really start reaching out?
That are on active duty, we fall underneath the DoD skill bridge order, as well as each branch of service has their own specifics regarding the program as well. But the big thing to remember if you're on active duty and you want to participate is, in order to sit in a classroom, you have to be within 180 days from your date of separation. So that's not your terminal leave day, that's not your TUI times. 180 days or less in order to participate. With that being said, it doesn't mean that you can't reach out to us and get some information from us to see about putting you and enrolling you in a future cohort. So for example, if you're on active duty and you come to us 2 years out, that's going to be a little bit too far out. We're going to want you to come back and re-engage with us as we get closer to that ultimate date for you. So Joanna and I always encourage folks 9 to 12 months out. And if you're looking for a specific cohort and you want to be in that cohort, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We always encourage you to go through the enrollment process, get that command approval, because folks, if you're on active duty, you are going to need some command approval in order to do it. What's different from our program compared to some of the other programs that fall underneath the Skill Bridge program is the only time that you're away from your unit are those 3 days that we spend face-to-face. And whether it's face-to-face or virtually face-to-face, those are the only 3 days that you'll be away from your unit. That Friday, you go back to your unit, and then the rest of your coursework, the certification coursework, is done online. But who else can be part of this? Boy, if you're in the National Guard or the Reserves and you're not on an active set of orders, you can participate in this program. I can't tell you how many reservists I run into that come off a deployment or come off some active duty time, and they absolutely detest going back to their job. This program is for you. Veterans of all eras are eligible to participate in the program. Initially, we were post 9/11, and if you think about the time that's gone by, I mean, that is a huge chunk of time, but we have opened it up to our pre 9/11 veterans. And we've had a handful out here in Southern California that have just done the same thing for the last 30 years, and they're just ready to do something else. But the other piece that I need to throw out there, and this is just, hats off to the IVMF, military spouses. The military spouse has always been a part of our programs. They've always been right there. So if you're a military spouse of an active duty service member, if you're a military spouse of a veteran, maybe your service member just decided they're going to be lifers, and spend an entire lifetime in the Corps, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? This program is for you as well. Our caveat is you have to have that honorable discharge. Those are all tactical specifics that each installation can walk you through when it comes time to enroll. But it's a great group, Chris.
That's so awesome. And so, this topic actually is trending in the conversation right now. And Steve Bailey had just asked, can I attend with 6 months after retirement? So, as I understand what you just shared, veterans of all eras, E1 through O10, 4 years or 40, are eligible to participate in the program. Is that correct?
Ready, it's like you want to do everything that you can possibly do when you get off active duty. There's not going to be, or before you get off active duty, there's not going to be anybody there to tell you what you need to do next. Ultimately, that decision is yours, and most people make it with their, with their families. And so if life is crazy and there's a whole bunch of unexpected that you didn't expect when you're transitioning, you may certainly come and be part of this program as a veteran. Once you start the program, meaning once you open that certification coursework up, it's game on. And what I mean by it's game on is that is your opportunity. And so we want the time to be right for you. You're the only one who can make that decision, though. The one thing that we do want you to think about is making sure when it is time that you're going to take that step back and really invest in yourself. It's interesting along the way when you start some of this certification coursework, the tangents that folks go in. I am a firm believer that knowledge is power. You cannot go wrong with education. And so maybe you end up going to work in an industry where, hey, I don't really need, let's just say I don't need this PMP to have this job here. You cannot tell me or convince me that all that coursework that you just got done going through isn't going to have some tidbits that are going to help you be productive at your current job. Knowledge is power. And just remember to invest in yourself. It's time, folks, especially for those that spent an entire lifetime in the military, for the military spouses who've spent a lifetime in the military. Take that moment to take a step back and invest in yourself. It's pretty empowering when it's all said and done.
Love it, and I love the way you shared that. And so maybe the final question before I let you go today, and I've kept you much longer than I know I should have, but I can't help it. So that final question comes from something that you just shared, which is, when you're ready for it. So if I am a transitioning service member, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of pressure, get a credential, get a certification. And so sometimes people lean into a credential or certification, not because they know what it is or because they have a trajectory or a path or a career in mind, but just to get letters after their name because there's such an emphasis on that in the process. So if I'm not sure yet of my career trajectory, whether I want to be human resources or project and program management, or whether I want to be technical and information technology, if I'm not sure of that yet, what would you recommend? Should I come and just get a credential while I can, or should I hold that in my quiver for later on?
I tell the same daughter, actually both of them, but I tell the same daughter whose birthday is today, that when it comes to making decisions, you go through the thought process, the pros and cons, and however you ultimately get to the decision that you're going to make. If you're making a good, sound decision, and pursuing your PHR is what you're going to do, then you're making a good, sound decision on that. We all know sometimes that things don't turn out the way that we want them to turn out. But if you fall back on your decision-making process at the time, was good and it wasn't just pulled out of your pocket, and thrown up in the air, please make that decision, because things will change. But if you're really uncertain right now, I really encourage you to read. Whether you go on LinkedIn, get that premium account. Please take advantage of that. Go on LinkedIn Learning and check out some of the different industries that are there. Go through some of the different tutorials that are there to see if you can actually envision yourself, in that market. Read the books. Richard Bowles and What Color Is My Parachute? It's timeless. It really is. But sometimes it's just taking a step back, focusing just directly on yourself and figuring out, which way do you want to go. This program is going to be here for you. Maybe you're caught up, you're here in Southern California and you're moving back to the East Coast. And I'm here to tell you that last move is worse than any other PCS move because you're never going to make another one again. And so if it's just all too much, take a deep breath and know once you get settled in your new area, that this program is going to be out there for you as well. But again, only you can determine, how you're going to be successful. And if you're that person that can work out of the car, while you're driving cross country, hey, more power to you. So Chris, there's no definitive answer on when folks should start, but folks just need to understand that the program's available to them after they take the uniform off as well.
And to answer Alicia T, who was asking in the chat, who joined us a little later, just to confirm, yes, Alicia, you did hear that correctly. Military spouses are eligible to participate in this program and earn that free training and credential and certification. It's really, truly amazing. And so, Kathryn, I want to bring you back and do this 20 times over because I know there's just so much more information we can share. And I appreciate everything that you and Mike up there at IVMF and the entire team of project and program managers and site facilitators across the nation really are doing with this Onward opportunity. As I said earlier, to me, I think is one of the most transformational opportunities in transition and veterans to be able to fit in today's career market. It's just, there's nothing else like it. And it's free to the service members, to the veteran, and to the military spouse, and you can't beat that deal. And so I'll turn it over to you if you don't mind for just any final thoughts that you might have that you'd like to share before I bump us off of here and let you get on with your day.
To come out and chat with everybody today, as well as getting to hang out with you. That's always a highlight of my day. Again, it's meeting people, folks, folks that maybe, you never would have had any interaction with, that, you really develop these great relationships. I was introduced by someone to a gentleman by the name of Bob Goff. Ironically, he's here in San Diego as well. But he has this wonderful Dream Big podcast out there. And he just came out with a recent book, the DreamWorks book, or the Dream Big book. And it's really about digging down and finding out what your ambitions are. You don't have to be like that old Dunkin' Donuts commercial where the guy gets up at 4 a.m. and he's like, time to make the donuts. Life doesn't have to be like that, whether, you're 22 and you're getting out of the military now, or, maybe now you're in your mid 40s, and you're getting out of the military. Life is fun. And I really encourage you to take the time, invest in you, figure out you, because chances are you might look a little bit different than you did when you were wearing that uniform a couple of years from now. I know I did. I know I do. There's the old Kathryn, I like to say, every now and again she'll wear her head, but that is just becoming just like a thing of the past. And there's so much more to life out there. So I really just encourage you to dream big, to quote Bob Goff, and find the things that just really make you tick.
Jennifer Link just asked if there's a link to your books, so I'm going to encourage her to connect with you. We'll make sure that that we've got you tagged into this so that Jennifer can just connect with you and take a look at that book, because it's good learning, and learning is absolutely lifelong essential. So thank you again for joining. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you, everyone who watched this session, participated live, or whether you're watching it after it's recorded. Really appreciate and hope we provide some information. 3 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be right back here with other leaders to help you learn more about career opportunities post-military and transition leaders who can help you out. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you for your time, and I hope everyone has a great day.